here. Yeah. And there's one chair back there. This is great. Well, there's a lot of that you here. Martha August of the Director of the History Center. And right now we're at the just beginning of an exhibit called Right to Flight, and a woman who should have had the gold chair. If we had one, it's celebration of stand so everyone can see you. You know, stand up so everyone can see who's been working. But stand up. Everyone else has been on the committee. I don't see it. Alan? Don't see Jerry. Those people have been working for 3 years on the Right to Flight experience. It's been very hard to decide what goes in the exhibit, what does not go in the exhibit, and what is going to go in the programming. This is History for Lunch. We have this every month, if Barb can tell you more. We put on your tables, we put these. Be sure to get one. If you don't get a table, we'll be sure to get you put in the hallway. This tells you some of the other things that are coming up. It doesn't tell you everything. For example, working on, and some of you have George Lippisch that was at Rockwell or worked with Arthur Collins, was also a musician, and we have a musician working on a concert of his music. So we want to take a look at that. Get some microphones here. So that any of you, we want to make sure that you know when that concert comes, so we sure get you involved in that. There's also, for those of you who have children or grandchildren, we put summer camp on those roads. Most importantly to me, this is actually I nag about all the time, is if we can catch everyone's email address, we can keep you up on what's happening at the History Center, and you will know, so that if things, opportunities come up that you don't know about, you will know about them. So please be sure to fill out the email slip. There's some circulating and some on every table. Please be sure you do that, and we'll let you know what's happening. And now I'd introduce the person who makes a lot of things happen here at the History Center. This is Barb Feller, one of our programmers, and the person in charge of today. Thank you. I am in the education department here and coordinate the educational programs, and it is a true pleasure to see all of you here. I see a lot of faces that I know from other places, and so I guess it was a good idea for us to have this Summer Freedom Festival. We're really glad. As Martha said, we do this once a month. It's a free program, and they are fantastic, as you're going to see today. Right now, we're putting our program to the theme of Right to Flight, and today's program is Blocksome, who has been working on a fascinating project since 1998 with a group of people from Rockwell, where they are analyzing information to find out about the remains or what has happened truly to Amelia Earhart. This program is going to be fascinating, I can guarantee that, and I just learned a minute ago that this is the perfect time for it because tomorrow is the 66th anniversary of her disappearance. 66 years ago tomorrow is when Amelia Earhart disappeared. Now we're going to find out about how a group right here in Linn County, which is what we have as our history here at the History Center, is working on this fascinating project. Now the upcoming History for Lunch programs that are already on here, the Right Connection, Life with Father, this is George Lippisch, this is Richard Scarce, who is a teacher in Mount Vernon, who grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and is not related to the Wright brothers, but my gosh, I think he's maybe reincarnated. You know, so much. You're going to love this program, and he's going to be doing a program for kids where they'll be building some models and trying an extension, a hands-on extension. And the program after that, the next month, the History for Lunch program will be George Lippisch, who will be coming here to talk about his father, Life with Father. In this case, means that he will be doing his famous father's life, Alexander Lippisch. And as Martha mentioned, there's a whole lot more to Alexander Lippisch than only his life work, because he came here from Germany, and he is a true Renaissance man, and it's an honor for us us to have these people. All right, I'm not going to take up any more of your time because I know this is going to be a great program and we're doing a full day. I'd like to introduce Rod Blocksome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and see such a crowd. I won't take up any time here. We'll plunge right into the program. But first, I'd like to kind of outline what we're going to see here today. Since this is the History Center, of course, we've got to start with the history. Probably everybody in the room, maybe some of you even remember when all of this happened in 1930. But we all heard about Linn but maybe some of that faded from your memory. So we'll start with a bit of history, talk very briefly on some of the technical analysis that I and our team of engineers in Blocksome did. And then we'll plunge right into the search expedition that I went on a little over a year ago to a remote part of the Pacific. So with that, let's start with some history from Amelia, and who better than from Amelia herself.
On July 24th of 1897, in the house in Ashton, Virginia, I, Amelia Earhart, was born to Amy and Edwin Earhart. 3 years later, my sister Mary Ann was born. I like to call her Pin because of the song she sang about pigeons, although she didn't like it very much. When Pin and I were little, our parents wanted to do many things that little girls probably weren't supposed to do. We got to play football, baseball, jump fences, even go sledding. My mother even had numerous names for us, which made it so much easier to jump fences. One of the biggest treats my father ever gave us was in 1908 on my 11th birthday. He took Paige and I to the Iowa State Fair where I saw my first airplane. Of course, after reading about airplanes and seeing them in many newspaper articles, I thought that it might be kind of fun for me to want to be doing things. Maybe he could be the pilot of one someday. When I told my father this, he said, "No idea. That is something you can never do." And I was very surprised because he had always told me that I could do anything as long as I set my mind to it. And I wanted to show him that I could fly a plane. And in 1920, I got that chance. I took my first airplane ride. It was $10 and only a 10-minute plane ride. But it only took 10 minutes for me to realize that flying was my dream. With the wind pushing against my face and my stars flying out behind me, I knew there was nothing else I'd rather do in the world than be a pilot. In 1921, finally, after many odd-jobs and help with my mother, I got my first airplane, a Kinder Airstream. In 1922, I set the wind and altitude record at 14,000 feet. In 1928, I was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean as a passenger. In 1931, I set the record in Arizona with 18,451 feet. I also said yes to marry my husband George Putman after being proposed 3 times. You're probably wondering why I said no 3 times. I was worried that I wouldn't have very much time for him with all the flying that I did. I never stayed in one place for very long, but he was very understanding and supportive of my career. In fact, he helped me see many of the records and goals I did. In 1932 was one of the biggest records I ever set. I became the first woman and only the second person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean solo. This was a very dangerous sight because 5 people had already entered it and gone down into the ocean. This was a 15-hour and 14-minute flight, so like any other normal person, I got kind of hungry. So I ate one meal sandwich, 2 chocolate Hershey bars for dessert, and a can of tomato juice to wash it all down. The first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean solo was Charles Linn. So many people like to call me which is the longest and hardest trip flight there is around the world. So, he finally gave in, and the goal was set. Of course, this trip was going to cost a lot of money, and many people were very generous and made great donations. But another thing I was going to do was carry plain white envelopes, just like this one, which could come in a box for not very much money, but I was going to get a cancellation stamp on them from each of the places I stopped, and then when I came back, they would be worth a lot of money, and people would buy them, and that would help pay off my trip. Finally, in 1937, on June 1st, I left Miami with 22,000 miles ahead of me starting my flight. The same year, on July 2nd, with a lot of my trip behind me, I left Lady City heading for Howland Island, with only 3 legs of my trip left. This is a picture of Tom and I. Tom was sort of my technical helper, so if there was anything wrong with my plane that he was able to figure it out, the problem out and fix it. This is a map of the 3 legs of my trip. As you can see down on the right-hand side, there's New Guinea where I took off, then I was heading for Howland Island where I would stay overnight, leave fuel, and then head to the Hawaiian Islands where I would do the same. And after that, I would head to Los Angeles where I would have been the first time to fly around the world. On the equator, of course, I never made it that far. And many of you were noticing the donut there that says the Itasca. The Itasca was the ship with the radio equipment that I could talk to if I had any trouble navigating. Another way I was going to navigate, I forgot to mention, was my navigator friend Newman, who was also on the plane with me. He was going to help me navigate my way, but in case anything didn't work out, I would be able to keep in contact with the Itasca. This is Howland Island from the air, and as you can see, it's a very, very small island, so it'd be very hard to land on from the air, even for a great pilot like me. I never really made it to Howland Island, and you're going to hear in a little bit more about that. And that's when the mystery began to find me, Amelia.
Okay, thank you very much. She'll be available after the program, too, if you'd like to. We'll talk just very briefly on the technical aspect now. CARC is the Collins Amateur Radio Club. We were all 7 in the team, members of this club, as well as the engineers of Collins. The club sort of sponsored it. Collins provided computing resources, but the rest of it was all done on our own time. And basically, there were 3 parts to the problem. This radio signal analysis was to determine how far from the island she was. She made several radio transmissions as she approached Howland Island. The Itasca was there. We have the original logs from the Itasca and some other information. And we basically recreated all of the technical aspects of her radio transmitter, her airplane, her antenna, receivers and receiver antennas on the Itasca. And then predict how far the airplane was at the time of these various transmissions. Part of the problem is this doesn't give you anything about direction. All we can tell is how far away. Also on the team we had 2 engineers that combined, I think, have some 70 years of navigational experience in design at Rockwell. And they looked at the navigation problem. They studied Fred Newman and his habits, what he did, how he approached this navigation problem, and came up with certain deductions from that. The eureka moment kind of occurred when all 7 of us got together one day. 5 of us worked on the radio signal analysis. We said, well, here's what we think. And the nav guy said, well, here's what we think. And we made overlays, and sure enough, it started fitting. And at that point, we all got a little boost of enthusiasm here that it might really be possible to figure out just where that plane went down into the ocean. So what we're trying to do is through science and technology determine a searchable area, a huge ocean in a very small plane. And what we're trying to do is to figure out what the search area could be that's small enough that it's economically feasible to search it. And it's very expensive, it's very remote, and so everything that we can do to sort of squeeze down in the search area, we can directly translate into cost of doing the search. So with that, just a couple of things here to kind of give you a flavor for what this analysis involves. This is a program called NET that allows you to construct antennas, and in this case the whole airplane, in three-dimensional space, and then it will analyze what the antenna radiation pattern is around the airplane. And this is one of the critical pieces of information that you have to have. Just to give you an idea, each little wire, each little piece here, has to be described with 6 numbers, each endpoint in three-dimensional space. It took an engineer 300 hours of his own time just to input this into the computer. The first time we ran it, this was several years ago, we had to set up the computer, but the computer took 7 hours to compute the solution. Today it takes about 45 minutes. And here's one of the outputs we get. You can visualize a balloon and poke your fingers in from the top and the bottom. This is a representation of the field, the antenna radiation field around the airplane. And from this and other plots the computer gives us, we now know how strong a signal is radiated from the airplane. So what I'll show you next is kind of leaping through 3 years worth of work. One time we kind of added it up and it was about 3,000 hours of labor. And I'll show you a recreation of what we think happened as she's flying in towards Allen Island. Now, to kind of set the stage, she left late in the beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning, flew all night. The airplane flies at about 118 knots at a ground speed of 10 knots. It's not an aircraft that what you're used to today. This airplane has 2 450 horsepower engines with propeller tips just a few inches outside the cockpit. There's no sound insulation. There's no thermal insulation. I got inside one of these things. On the pilot cast, you can see daylight around it. It's really what we call straight today. But in those days, that was the leading edge technology in the airplane design. So as she's flying into Howland, she's been airborne for about 20 hours. You can imagine sitting in this cockpit that's about the size of the front seat of the Volkswagen, flying this airplane in that kind of noise without sleep, and the navigator at times up front when he's taking control. Basically, he's working in the back of the plane doing the navigation project. So it's the following morning, they fly through the night, and it's the following morning, the plan was to arrive near Howland Island at sunrise. And at that point, they can shoot the sun, and they can get a line of position through the island to help navigate the end in case the radio fails. And the radio did fail, by the way. So I'll show you a series of slides here, and you should be able to hear a simulation of how her signal sounded. Let me orient you on the map this slide. The dot is Howland Island. The X is where Newman's chart plotted the island, which was 5 miles of area. The dotted line is the sun line position. That's the only navigational line you get after the sunrise, because we can't see the stars any longer. This light blue circle is the limit of visibility of the island from 1,000 feet. We know at the end she was flying 1,000 feet with the airplane. So she's got to get within that circle in order to have any hope of visually seeing the island. The green line is a line of clouds. To the north and west is cumulus puffy clouds, so typical of that part of the world. Down in this area, the ATASCA reported unlimited visibility, clear blue sky. Now the rings you see with the distances blocked out are what we computed from the radio signal analysis. This is the equator, so right close to the equator. Here's the date line, the international date line. And when she made this transmission at 6:15 in the morning on Pacific Standard Time, she thought they were about 200 miles out. And our analysis places the airplane about here. So with each succeeding slide, you'll see and hear what she said and the track that we have analyzed the plane took.
I was not in
happened here, the sun rose in between these two transmissions. He got a sun shot and updated his position. He didn't move any 100 miles, so it was only about 50 miles. So they now have a more accurate range to the sunline position, about 100 miles out. And she says, I'll make noise in the microphone. That's to assist the task in doing radio direction finding on her signal. This transmission gives us a lot of information. They've been able to get a bearing from the Atascocita. They haven't heard them. Newman's typical approach to this navigation problem is they had gotten a direction line from the Atascocita was to fly straight in. Having not done that, he does an offset, an intentional offset to intersect this line well north of his intended destination. That way, when he gets to the line or close to it, he knows in this case he would turn right. If you think about it, if you flew straight in and didn't see the island, then there's a 50-50 chance that you to your left or to your right, and you could choose wrong and wind up in the water. So we believe that there's enough time and other evidence that he came with this offset, came down, and this is the location now by their indication that that's their nav solution. The island should be there and they don't see it. And of course, all of this is translated to the north and where they think it is. But each time you'll notice the signal getting louder and less loud.
Go ahead on 7500. Either now or on the scheduled time on half hour. KHQ2 calling Alaska. We received your signal, but unable to get a memo. Please take bearing on us and answer 3105 with voice.
See, now this is 8 o'clock in the morning now. They've come on down the line even further, searching for the island. And we believe they broke out of this cloud area here, and Newman would have gotten a very easy sunshot right about this time. And had they, and I believe that several of us do, that they came down on the south side, and so we see, whoops, we're off the line and turned short on it. We've flown past the island. So now they're going to circle and head back up the line. She's still looking for a bearing on us with this radio direction finding. This is the frequency that she's asking for. All this communication took place on 3.1 megahertz. She's also telling him to go ahead on 7500. That's another frequency that they use for radio direction finding. So this is the last transmission here. There probably was another one someplace about in this position here, but it's not recorded in the Atascocita law. The gasoline analysis, the fuel consumption has shown that there's certainly we're out of gas out here. And there's several indications and descriptions from interviews with the actual radio operator that when she made this transmission, she realized she was in serious trouble. Probably and most likely the tanks were dry, and even while she was talking here and changed her mind from transmitting to listening, that the engines were coughing and running out of gas. And at that point, she's got anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds before impact on the ocean. So there's no more time to fool around with the radio. She's got to get rid of all that, get the aircraft trimmed up for lighting flight for ditching into the ocean, because it's going to come up pretty fast from 1,000 feet. The other key information is here, we're running north and south, which is another supporting piece of evidence. They came down north and then south at least. And the only position information she can give is that they're on that line somewhere, 157337, which is the bearing of the sunlight position. It's so critical to navigation. So, if you could predict where this is, that's where the airplane ditched in the ocean and probably sank shortly thereafter. So, search expedition. I'll show you a little bit how we did this. Then I have a short 12-minute film by the National Geographic. And following the film, you'll see how this expedition turned out. And I'll show a few more interesting sidelights of the trip. But it was quite an adventure. The other Cedar Rapids, and Russell Collins is Tom Vincent, but you'll see him in the video as well. Tom and I flew to Honolulu and met the ship there. The ship came out of Seattle, Washington. Took us 10 days to get down to Honolulu. We refueled, resupplied, checked out things, picked up missing equipment that they'd forgotten. We had it shipped in on the airline. And a day later, then embarked for the vicinity of Howland Island. 1,650 nautical mile trip. Ship moves at 12 knots. It took us a week of travel just to get down there. Here's the ship, the research vessel Davidson, 175-foot research vessel that's outfitted for this kind of work. I'll show you some more of the machinery in the back. But it's right here, Pier 9 in Honolulu. Couple shots inside. This is one of the largest suites. Tom and I shared a cabin about this size. 2 bunk beds, a lavatory, there's 2 lockers here, and some of them have small desks. Not a lot of space. Probably mostly have a bathroom that's larger than this. We worked opposite shifts. Each of us worked a 12-hour shift, and we were on opposite shifts, so we each essentially had a cabin for ourselves. Tom worked from noon to midnight, and I worked midnight to noon. Very important on an expedition like this is the food. Here's the galley. We had 2 excellent cooks, one from Scotland, one from Poland, and this was breakfast. You see the nuns hats there to keep food from sliding down. And here's how we did the search. This is a sled that we tow in the ocean on the end of this cable. And there's a single bolt that spins the whole sled from that cable. And what it has on it is cameras, there's video cameras, there's high-powered lights, you can see a lot of it inside of here. And there's 2 sonar transducers on each side. There's a long-range sonar and a short-range sonar. These are side-scanning sonars. They put out a band on each side. There's equivalent ones on the other side. And then right in front, there's another little sonar that looks sort of like a weather radar that knows the plane, and it's scanning a 60-degree sweep in front of us. And basically, it's there to make sure we don't run into anything. Big rock or cliff or something down there. We don't want to plow this sled into it and damage. 2 fins on the back for stability, but basically the sled is what we call flown just by control of the cable. There's no control surfaces that make it swim through the water. It just trails behind the ship. Here's a picture I really like. This was one of the few times that we went off the ship and we were out in this remote part of the Pacific. And you notice that the seas are very flat. I mean, there are no chop or anything. So we launched a small dinghy. 4 people could go out and buzz around the ship, take pictures. You can see the cable now coming off this winch system through the pulley and down into the ocean. And all this pictures taken, they're actually trolling the Nomad down about 3.5 miles into the ocean. Give you an idea of the scale. There's people standing. There's one person standing there. I think that's me standing right there. I'm taking pictures of them while they were shooting. Close back. Also, we're running fairly high in the water. By this time, we burned off a lot of fuel. So the ship was rocking and rolling a little bit. Schematically, this is what this search looks like. And just not being an ex-Navy person, really fascinating me at first. Here's the Davidson on the surface of the ocean, and 4 miles behind us, and 3.5 miles down is where Nomad operates. So he's on the end of a cable over 5 miles long. Sort of takes the shape as it goes through the water. As you go deeper and deeper into the ocean, the pressure is extremely high. The viscosity of the water increases. So by the time we're down here at 18,000 feet, the cable is almost vertical coming away from the sled. So we fly the sled at an optimum height for both C4 of about 100 meters. And if you had a pair of binoculars and could see through the water, it'd be hard to find this little guy out there 5 miles. It's a sled. That was a piece of machinery. Here's another schematic to look at. If you look at the end of Nomad as it's being pulled forward into the screen, the side scan sonar pings once a second. So the velocity through those sounds in the water allows you to look out 750 meters on either side. So this is 1.5 kilometers wide, a little over a mile. Sweep, so we take. To keep it at depth and to get good resolution on the sonar, the ship moves at about 2 miles an hour. You can almost hardly imagine it's moving. So these paper over the side, so yeah, it's moving. It takes a long time to do this. The resolution we get out of the sonar is basically 1 pixel per square meter. So like the size of that desk would be represented by 2 pixels on the sonar. So the airplane, being 55 feet wingspan, should show up very easily. So how did we plan the search? This is something that kind of fascinates people. I've taken off a lot of the latitude and longitude here because we do want to protect the exact location. But basically, Nauticos has a program called REMAP, a predictive search area in this state. One of their analogs used what's called a Monte Carlo technique, which is basically something similar to rolling dice on a computer. And he came up with this odd shape. Elton Long, who wrote one of the definitive books on this type of search, and researched Earhart's original documentation for the past 25 years, and also a retired Flying Tiger airline pilot, predicted this area. Well, these guys all lined up pretty nicely with each other. So here's where the column guys came out. We didn't overlap REMAP at all. And so where did we search? Well, basically, we're all volunteers. We have no money invested in it. And these guys are quite heavily invested. Search area. It's this odd shape, this reddish area across here. It gets half of what we predicted, but it gets all the REMAP. So how is the search controlled? I mentioned this winch system, just schematically here real quickly. There's a traction winch, those 2 big wheels on the back of the ship, and then a storage drum that takes up all of this cable. And these are driven by hydraulic lines. There's about 8 hydraulic lines that go from hydraulic pressure unit driven by a diesel engine, and then we have a backup driven by electric engine that ran off with a 3-phase ship's power. And all of this is controlled by a simple joystick, just like the kids have on the video. One on the aft deck for launch and recovery, and then another one up in the ops room. You basically control all this machinery with the joystick. And here's what it looks like in real life. There's a traction wing. The cable comes in off the back of the ship, wraps around these 2 wheels 5 times, exits out the bottom, comes through this level line. You can think of this as just a giant fishing reel. And this travels back and forth on a lead screw that needs to put on and take off these lines. And it has to be done very precisely. The cable is under about 15,000 pounds of tension on the back of the ship. And by the time it exits the traction winch here, it's knocked down to about 1,000 pounds and goes on and off the reel. This reel holds 10,000 meters. And I apologize for flipping around on these units. The National Geographic is with us, and they have a calculator out there every time. So all the science is done in metric. All the navigation is done in knots and nautical miles, and everybody else comes to think in feet and inches. Here's a shot of the ops room. This is where everything took place. Basically, it takes 3 people to run everything. There's more than that here. Here's the watch supervisor. This fellow here watches the ship's position. They're guided by a GPS navigation. So they've got a lane that's 20 feet wide out there in the middle of nowhere. They've got to keep that ship going down that lane. This fellow here, this is Tom Vincent, and you see the joystick right here. And he's got several screens to watch. One of them brings up all the telemetry from the sled, tells how it's doing. And he also looks at the first sonar return, and it basically tells him how high the sled is off of the sea floor. And he's got to maintain that in this window of 80 to 100 meters high, which is roughly 300 feet. This fellow here, you can't see it, he's got a little more computing power sitting in front of him. He does the first analysis of the sonar data. As it comes across, he's got more tools that he can look at suspicious objects and things and analyze angles and distances and log anything that looks like it might be interesting. And then further analysis, and the final word on all of this is this fellow here you see from the back, Tom Detweiler, you see him in the film a little bit more. Tom is probably one of the handful of experts in this area worldwide, certainly in the United States. He started with Chuck Rousseau back in the 1960s. He was Bob Ballard, head of operations when they found the Titanic. And basically what he would do is take each 24 hours worth of data that was recorded, come down, and he's got 4 of these 20-inch monitors, and he spread the sonar across, put on his headphones, listen to classical music. 3:30 in the morning, he'd spend 5 hours straight scrutinizing all this data for the previous 24 hours. So what did we find? Well, a couple interesting things. This is the first line in. The second shift, I was there actually flying Nomad at the time. My only expertise at that point was reading the manual for the past couple days. And I started seeing these arcs come up there. And so I said something to the watch supervisor, Sean Dan. I said, look here, something symmetrical coming across. Here's the center line of where Nomad's traveling. And over the next half hour or so, we painted this volcanic caldera on the bottom of the ocean. Long extinct. You can see the rim coming along here. And this dark is real hard rock in the center of it. Light is a soft return. In other words, here's the shadow of this rim. And the darker it is, the more sound reflections of the cone. This is about a mile wide. Now, here, mostly through the mission, we made this picture up. But basically, it's a mosaic of all of the lines. You can see the tracks. We call this mowing the lawn. Pull up, make a big turn, come back, and overlap it a little bit. Pull it up, make another turn, go back. And they're roughly around 35 miles long. And the turns, when we first started out, the turns were taking 4.5 to 5 hours. And some of the crews started telling us about a technique they use with long-line fishing. And we kept experimenting with it, we got it down to about a 2-hour turn. So that cuts down a lot on the lower end when you come back to that. That caldera right there just shows you right here to give you an idea of the scale. It's a very good place to look for the airplane. This is all soft sand mud. I mean, if that airplane had been sitting out there, it'd been like a sore thumb. Now, the areas here where it's a little harder rock have been tougher. That's why they're sure that you see the spot keep it sand in there. And by the way, you notice that these skips in here, there is about 6 square miles that got missed different times. We had power glitches a couple times when Scott would come and turn on the stove for breakfast about 5 in the morning. And one of the jobs besides running this thing was there were 2 of us called hookers on each ship. And basically, periodically we had to bring the sled up for servicing. And when it breaks the water behind the ship here, we have to hook these lines on it to stabilize it before we bring it out of the water. The ship is pitching and rolling, and it's got to come through this A-frame. The A-frame tilts forward, and then we drop the sled on the deck. And you'll see that operation here in this couple of slides. This is National Geographic without his life jacket on. She's holding on to things, keeping the ball over. Here comes the sled. And you can see the lines on each side. If you tilt the A-frame in, that's driven by hydraulics as well. Now, before we get to this film, here's a group picture. On the way in, we let the ship just kind of drift for a half hour, had a little party out on the coastal end. We took this group picture. This is everybody that was on board. There were 14 crew that came with the ship, including the captain right here, David. And 20 people from the ops team. Most of them nautical folks, some of them volunteers and a few investors. A lot of people asked about the 3 women on board. This is Kristen, she's a correspondent with National Geographic. Julie here is the company lawyer and the legal counsel. After the trip, promoted to general manager of Nauticos. Dave here owns Nauticos, Dave Jordan, the president. And this is his younger sister, Sue Morris, who is also an employee and an ocean engineering technician. The other real important fellow here is Scotty, the Scottish cook. Here's Tom Vincent from Rockwell. Step back over here. These are the rest of the crew. Most of of these are crew right here, as you can tell, these are salt leaves. So with that, let me switch the audio, and maybe if we can turn the lights just a little bit. Run this program video, and it'll show you how the search turned out.
5 years ago, the world's most famous aviatrix was missing over the Pacific. Amelia Earhart, on a globe-girdling flight with navigator Fred Newman, was off for a hunt over trackless ocean wastes and was never heard from again. On the chance that she might be safe on then San Remote Island, an intensive air-sea search went underway immediately, but not even wreckage was ever found. Many and varied have been the theories of the disappearance, such as the possibility she wandered to the island of Trump, then being secretly fortified by the Japanese, and was executed to keep those plans secret. For a quarter century, the world has wondered.
On February 27, 2002, the Nauticos Corporation begins its long-awaited search for Amelia Earhart's airplane. Welders prepare the ship to receive 45 tons of equipment needed to conduct a sonar search in the deep ocean. Mobilization starts in Seattle, Washington, for the research vessel Davidson. Supplies are loaded from containers that have traveled by truck across the U.S., from the Nauticos Operations Center at Ship Point, Maryland. Everything from soup to nuts, hydraulic winches to hard hats. There may be no chance to resupply at sea. The expedition to the Western Pacific is planned to last 83 days. Along with software engineers and navigation specialists, there is enough computing power on the ship to run a large business. The Davidson's next stop will be Honolulu, on a voyage that will ultimately run for more than 10,800 miles. She will have a crew of 34 aboard, including 2 cooks, 32,000 feet of cable, and a remotely operated sonar sled named Nomad. The plan is to establish a 1,000 square mile search centered on an area Nauticos analysts believe has the highest chance for discovery. It will take the Davidson 7 days from Hawaii to arrive at the site. Expedition members along the way will have a chance to test their equipment and their sea legs. Navigation is critical to the search for the airplane. There are no witnesses to the mystery about what happened to Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Newman. An imaginary grid, like a road map, is established with computers over the sea floor. The Davidson must run accurately if the survey is to be then in use. The ship will tow the Nomad sonar sled at the end of 30,000 feet of cable, just 80 meters off the sea floor. Crew members help with creative ideas to keep the ship on course and reduce turnaround time. They expect to find an intact plane in water almost 4 miles deep. In the operations center, glowing screens bring up information about the sea floor. It is almost always flat sand and a good place to locate a metal sonar target.
For computer analysis, we bring that data over to this station, and Rob here is processing that data with all sorts of manipulation tools that he has. The station has the ability to stretch that signal out and show it at its full resolution.
Those on watch operate the huge winch system. It controls 10 tons of cable and the Nomad with just one hand.
See a little better in some of the other plots, but I've broken this down into 1 nautical mile by 1 nautical mile grid squares. I can also set up the input parameters to look at the case where the anchor points south of Holland, and the map, you can see a map for the southern half of the island. Okay, then I take the difficult plot to generate one that takes a lot of computing time and power, was to combine the radio signal strength information and the visual areas information. How the Nile actually will be a little bit along the plus y-axis here, a couple miles.
Actually, that airplane is going to look like it's been sitting in a garage for too long, maybe with dust on it. It won't be buried, or it won't be covered with anything. It'll be sitting here almost like the day after now.
Day turns to night as the Nomad is retrieved, serviced, and sent back into the sea. But the Davidson must refuel, and the island of Tarawa, 2 days from the search site, is chosen. No one aboard has seen land for 36 days. Refueling at this remote tropical island on the equator takes a lot of creative engineering. But the stopover is welcome, even if it's only for 24 hours. Tom Vincent and Ron Blocksome from Collins Radio use the Tarawa stop to set up their radio amateur station ashore, and all through the night work other stations around the world. Underway again and resupplied with fuel, life for the 3 women aboard the Davidson turns to the pleasures of baking. Pumping oil. Diesel repair. And cooling off in a packing case-sized pool.
Among all the marvels of modern invention, that with which I am most concerned is, of course, air transportation. Flying is perhaps the most dramatic of recent scientific attainments.
Day 53. The Nauticus crew has accomplished surveying 630 square nautical miles, but has not yet found the plane. Everyone expects to find the Earhart plane any moment, as the area of high probability remaining to be searched shrinks in size.
Right now, looking at wire.
8:30 p.m. Bill Mills in the Ops Center reports he has no winch control. Operations Director Tom Detweiler arrives on the Davidson's bridge. Quickly, he heads down to join Watch Leader Tom Beatty on the aft deck. Jay Ellis, racing ahead, has already managed to stop the winch. The cable drum has been brought under control, but the sonar sled lands on the sea floor, followed by most of the heavy cable. The Davidson is even towed backwards by its weight. The ship is now anchored in 18,300 feet of water by the sonar sled cable.
Why are you shaking, Jay?
We had a little nose break, hydraulic nose break. It's a little exciting. And the wire starts going out. Now, you can't stop it. It's exciting.
analyst Jeff Powell to try and rebuild one of the hydraulic motors. Chunks of metal are found inside the motor casing. One motor appears to have disintegrated. Detweiler waits. The search for Amelia Earhart has come to an unexpected and abrupt halt. Nauticos risks losing almost $1 million worth of equipment if the cable must be cut and left on the sea floor along with the sonar slip. Dawn breaks. The ship has been immobilized for almost 9 hours. The cleaned and rebuilt motors are the only hope towards retrieving 19,000 feet of cable and Nomad.
Yeah, we've replaced one of the motors with a spare that we had. We've had to take one of the other motors, clean it out, rebuild it as best as we could, put it in place, and now we're getting ready to try to take tension on the winch, see if our rebuild jobs are going to work. It's our only option. We're down to our last option right now. This is it. If it doesn't, then we've got to consider leaving the vehicle.
But the rebuilt motor works. The winch system begins to retrieve the cable, and Nomad begins its long journey back to the surface.
We searched thoroughly. We searched the heck out of the bottom of the ocean, 630 square miles. We just had 200 to go. And it's like if you search, you know, your keys are in your house somewhere, and you search everything but the living room. It's got to be in the living room.
It will be 4.5 hours before its cameras finally see the light of day and dutifully record its own rescue. Nauticos has begun the search for Amelia Earhart's Lockheed Electro, lost near Howland Island, July 2nd, 1937. Nauticos plans to return to the Western Pacific until her plane is found.
Oh, a ship out upon the ocean sees a speck against the sky. Amelia Earhart's flying past.
We had kind of a bittersweet ending. There was no more hydraulic fluid. We were out of spare parts. We were very lucky to retrieve all the equipment. But that ended the search, and it was kind of a long 5 days back to Hawaii. But by saving the equipment, left the door open for a return to finish the search, and that's where we're planning to go next. Hopefully this fall. There's the money right now. We've got a few minutes here. I'll show you a few more shots of what went on this trip. And then we'll maybe we'll have time for a few questions. Tom and I took some radio equipment along and treated everybody that phone patches home through the Collins station here on C Avenue. These are the volunteers that came down Took turns 3 nights a week getting on the Air Force and running phone patches so people out there could talk back home to their family and friends. So here's a couple of shots. There's Sue talking to her husband. We also had a little fun. Most of this, there wasn't any time when we were working, but on the trip over to Taro and back, there was some time to do a little fooling around. Tom and I got the experts really going with this photograph until we should have missed one. And of course, you saw Scotty's angels looking movie there. Wouldn't want to step in the kitchen with me. And the rest of the story is Paul Arby sitting on this swimming pool. Bruce, you know, was a pretty dusty crewman. And he had pulled his pool out of the packing crate and a car of seawater. And they went inside to put his swimming suit on, and they came back, found the 2 gallons already jumped in. That didn't stop. A few shots here at Tarawa. This was unexpected, by the way. The ship was advertised to hold 65,000 gallons of diesel fuel. And we got out there and started measuring it and fuel consumption and found out we weren't going to be able to last 8 weeks as we planned without any fuel. It turns out it only held 45,000. So we had to pull off and go over to Tarawa, which was a 2-day trip. They thought they would gas out in about 6 hours and be back heading towards Howland. Well, it took 24 hours. Nothing happened very fast in Tarawa. But it was a welcome break. We got off of this 12 hours on, 12 hours off, 7 day routine. Crossed the date line, had a little celebration there. Here's Taro, and many of you remember Taro was quite famous in World War II. It was the first amphibious landing in the U.S. Marines. And they came in, the invasion was exactly our route in. They came in here, and as you read, the only passage inside the into the lagoon is the same route that this invasion took place. This is 5 kilometers, so the island we were on here are about 2.5 miles long. Came right in there, the one and only pier, and docked there. And of course, we were big news. This is the dock. And of course, seeing green grass and a green tree was really a treat. Just 5 minutes after we got there, we got the boat. Tom and I went over and got our ham license from Moteter Kayak. Very accommodating gentleman. He was a minister of telecommunications for the nation of Kiribati. Our passport, $50, and our U.S. license, and he handed us the official license for Taro. And then he volunteered to take us around and show us some sights of the island. It was 100 degrees and 100% humidity. There's a picture out in front of his office. Not a very wealthy nation. His government office. This is a famous photo from the invasion in 1943. This same gun appeared in the National Geographic a few months after that. The 8-inch gun that took a direct hit from the U.S. bomb blew the barrel. These are big things. And here's the invasion beach, and this was remarkable to me. Here's the jump, Sherman Hanks still out there. The remnants of the invasion. Nobody's cleaned it up. Nobody salvaged it. Just stepped out there and rotting away. Now, not all of that's from the invasion. There's a ship going out there. And Tom was a hit for the kids. He gave them ice cream and then they eat. One of the rules on the ship was no alcohol, so I had this fellow from New Zealand, and he invited us over to the best hotel in town. Afterwards, Jonathan Blair, who spent the previous 17 years as a photographer for National Geographic magazine. If you go back and look at your National Geographic, you see a lot of articles by him. He spent 10 minutes setting up this picture. I just wanted to shoot it and go. Of course, here's our little ham operation. I call this a deer in the headlight shot. By this time, we've been up for 24 hours. There's no sleeping over here. And the morning when we left, it was just outstanding. you'll see more of the sunrise. Here's the sled, added more equipment. That orange box is a sealed lead acid battery, sealed to take 8,000 psi. There's the camera you saw that videotaped its own rescue. And this is, by the way, one of the lights. These lights are 3 kilowatt power, and they are so bright. We turned one on to test it while I was sitting here on the deck. The deck's about 6 or 7 inches away, and just a couple seconds later, the paint was smoking on the deck. That's what it's like looking at an art world. And of course, here, there are very few pictures taken of that night. One of them is somebody brought me the camera. Most everybody was intensely busy. And the place was a mess. There's the motor. This is the one at the center. And there's another shot of the retrieval. Okay, these will run automatically. We'll take time for some questions and comments here. This series of color pictures of the sunrises and sunsets taken down there. I took all the sunrise pictures, and Tom, of course, was awake during the sunset. The longer we were out there, the better it got. It was just a fantastic light show. And after a few weeks of that, one morning, I was standing out there taking pictures of the sunrise, and it kind of occurred to me that it's kind of a unique experience. There's probably very, very few places on this earth you can stand and look the same today as it did 66 years ago. And there we were in the same area as the Earhart was. And Amelia must have saw a sunrise very similar to one of these during that morning when she was looking for Howland Island, and we're out there seeing the same scenery, looking for her airplane. So, any questions or comments? These will look through here. So,
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Since you had such a small, relatively speaking, area of high probability to search, is the ship going to go out with the intent that if you don't find it in that high probability area, you're going to start moving out? And when are they going to get to the rest of the Rockwell Collins area that you had?
I think the answer is yes to all of those. What's remaining in the film, he said 200 miles. It's actually 400. We had 1,000. That box I showed you was 1,000 square miles, and we did 630. So we'll certainly go back with the amount of money for overhead and things. We've got to go back and plan on more than 400 miles, and we'd be foolish not to. So yes, and I really think the additional area is going to cover more of the colony. Any other? By the way, we have questions for Jennifer here too. Yeah.
Well, if you find the plane, what will you do?
The plan is to, first of all, not disperse it while we photograph it. There'll be an intensive photographic effort. How long that takes basically depends on the condition of the plane. If there's an opening into the fuselage, it'll take a long time because they plan to send down small remote tethered cameras, like you've seen on the Discovery Channel, and it'll go inside and actually photograph the interior of the plane. That may take anywhere from a few months to as much as a year. Then the plan is to go down and bring it up, basically with some sort of a fine mesh net under it, and haul it to the surface. They'll then put it in a barge filled with seawater, so that under seawater begins the trip back to the United States. The plan then is basically the investors now get to recoup their investment. It'll go on to exhibit for as long as maybe 5 to 8 years. One investor that's involved with the Titanic exhibit would like to raise enough money to make a museum on a barge. He says there's 55 U.S. cities that could visit and take it around that way. And then finally, after that period of time, we can find a permanent home in Smithsonian, Washington, D.C.
This is kind of an obvious question, but are you going?
Yeah. But I plan to go. Yeah. In fact,
2 short questions. One, what was the diameter size of that cable that pulled that young man? And also, did you observe any shipwrecks or anything else?
yeah, that cable was amazing. It was slightly less than 3/4 of an inch in diameter. It was unbelievable that it could carry that. And when the sled was down and that tension was on, you could go up and slam your hand into the hard as you can, and it feels just like a ship railing. It does not vibrate, it doesn't do anything. And yet, when it's on board, and there's no tension on it, it reflects very easily in your hand. It's basically got 3 cores of fiber optic, and we use one of them to bring all the telemetry on fiber optic. The other 2 are spares. And there are 3 small conductor wires that bring electrical power down to the sled. And then 3 reps of steel on the outside. What was the second part of your question?
Did you observe any shipwrecks?
Oh, yes. That really stunned everyone. We did not find anything artificial on that. The nautical people were very, very surprised because typically on every one of these searches they've ever done in the past, there's junk or things that fall over some ships, sunken thing. We never saw a thing artificial. Yeah.
Sounds like there'd be some ship playing in one.
Yes, very good question. The plane was built, it was the first all-metal aircraft that Lockheed made. And at that time, the state of the art, they didn't fully appreciate the strength you could get out of the fuselage. So the wing is attached to the plane with what looks like a bridge member. And actually, you have to step over it to go from the cockpit back into the fuselage. So it's a very, very ruggedly built plane. The second short answer to your question is that we looked at ditching passengers on board off the coast of Massachusetts in the late 50s. The plane did not break up, and the pilot, crew, and all the passengers got out of the plane into the life raft before the plane sank. So the chances are better than usual. If she did things right, we got it on the water. And the waters you saw there, most of the time, the seas are very flat and relatively easy to reach. No pilot ever fractured.
Is there any thought of finding, whether you're going to find anything, human remains at all with the plane, or do you think
No,
it's probable
the
that
experts say even if they do not get out of the plane, and we don't know whether they did or not, even bones, the deep sea organisms, won't be. But we will find, highly likely anyway, if they were in the plane, their shoes or some articles of clothing. For some reason they would attack leather or paper.
Yes, I'd like to ask Emily Baker if she has studied the life of Amelia before she did this, and would she like to go flying like Amelia did?
Well, actually, I did a school project on the aircraft, so I studied a lot about her. And I don't think I really want to do it.
Did you look into any of the accusations that were made by Robert Meyer that he actually heard radio transmissions from her because they were playing with little ping pong balls and actually they felt
Yes, we studied all of that. There's a lot of problems we have, scientifically speaking, with some of that. There are a lot of people, let me say this, there are other groups looking, and they have a slightly different slant on the theory. That what's properly called post-lost radio transmissions, anything after what we call the last one. And there were a lot of reports, and there's a lot of credibility to some of them. Some of them were proven to be hoaxes and misunderstandings and things like that. There's a group called TIGHAR who have studied this extensively. They've got a lot of very bright, brilliant people working for them, and they're convinced the plane crash landed on or near what was called Gardner Island at the time. And so they send expeditions down there. And you'll find out, they have a very good website on the internet. You can check it out.
Did the attachment get a bearing on her when she was airborne?
No, they never did. And basically, the radio operators, when they interviewed later, said that most of her transmissions were too short. Radio direction finding was a very new thing at that time. In fact, the direction finder that they had with them was a prototype that they had just picked up at Pearl Harbor and took with them down there. They had no manual with it, no training. They kind of knew how it was supposed to operate. But you can see that the recipe for disaster in a lot of this where things were done in a rush. They never got a bearing on her, and nor did she get a bearing on their system. Yes.
How could you control the depth of
submersible, you said there's no control surfaces. How do you keep it flying and make that automatic? Well, yeah, the ship, as long as it's holding a straight, steady course, it'll follow right behind us. And the control of depth is just like pulling it. The lift is that viscosity of the water. Things, you go faster, things can rise in the water. Okay, maybe one more, and then I'm going to have to.
Not a question, but I think that's a remarkable experience, and your pictures are outstanding.
Oh,